with the federal government dramatically outspending Biafran secessionist groups as both sides seek President Donald Trump's ear over claims of a Christian genocide. The administration and its allies have moved swiftly to counter separatist narratives in the U.S. Capitol, citing a $750,000 a month deal for 6 months renewable contract with the Republican-linked DCI group to press Abuja's. Well, the scale of the contract dwarfs that of the shadowy and unknown Biafran Republic government in exile, which is paying up $66,000 a month to the smaller Madison and Washington lobbying firm to push for sanctions against Nigerian officials, greater U.S. engagement with a putative Biafran administration, and even support for military strikes and favorable oil deals with Washington in an unidentified future Biafra.
So if Biafra, the people promoting Biafra, if they are going to the U.S. and they are paying how much? $60,000 to sell their own story, that Igbos are being marginalized and persecuted in Nigeria, and that the idea of a Republic of Biafra will be a good proposition. I think it makes sense that the Nigerian government too is in that space. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that the Nigerian government wants to be heard so that there's not just one voice in the room. On December 12, 2025, the Nigerian government paid $4.5 million for 6 months, and the contract is renewable for another 6 months. So the lobbyists, what they will be doing basically is to get the Nigerian voice into the room who will speak up. And finally, those Biafra separatists who are looking for lobbyists in America, they can spend their $60,000, but they should know, they should be reminded that is an act of sabotage against the Nigerian state. If you are still a patriot, if you are still a citizen, and you are sabotaging the Nigerian state, demarketing your country within the international sphere, there are consequences in that particular regard. Everybody should be well advised before we are told tomorrow that we are not supporting people who are following self-determination rules.
Lobbying.
Dr. Ruben Abati, in my mind, sincerely, I would have loved to call you a foolish man at this point in time, but let me not call you a foolish man. Let's take it gradually and deliberately, right? I want to respond to your assertions in regards to this topic. Fine. Let's assume the Biafrans lobbied the United States in regards to the fact that there is need for them to have Biafra land, right? So the next question that should come to our mind and every reasonable person's mind is the fact that why are they lobbying for Biafra? Just like you equally said it, marginalization, right? And you quite agree with me, everybody will quite agree with me that marginalization cannot be proven on paper. Because just like every other part have senators or whatever, they equally have that and some government interventions, right? But I want to prove it, I want to put it to you. Show me at any point in time that any party have actually zoned the presidency to Igbo land, considering and having in mind that these are the third or the second most populous tribes in Nigeria. If politics is to be dwelled on the virtue of the fact that the majority actually takes that, you will quite agree with me that there is no party in the history of Nigeria that have actually zoned presidency to the Igbo people, right? That is one. And secondly, let's go on virtue of the fact that, okay, let's assume they paid money for their voices to be heard. You quite agree with me that there's nothing they will do in Nigeria for their voices to be heard, and they decided to do that in the United States, right? But the fact is, are you actually succumbing and accepting the fact that the government of Nigeria, instead of actually showing reasons and presenting facts why Nigeria is united and everybody is accommodated, is actually lobbying, instead of showing facts that proves that what they are doing reflects the interests of everybody irrespective of region? Is that what you are saying? The government did not do that, but rather they decide to dwell on lobbying, using taxpayers' money to lobby just like Biafrans are equally robbing. And you have justified that, Abi. Now Ogungo finish you, sincerely speaking. And let's face it, what is the cry of the Biafrans? The cry of the Biafrans is, we have an incompetent government. We have been bedeviled with corruption for decades. Can you actually come out and prove that Nigeria have not been bedeviled with incompetent government and corruption in all facets? Can you actually prove that? You cannot. And when you talk about sabotage, what do you understand by the concept of sabotage? Is there anything that sabotages Nigeria more than incompetent government and corruption in all facets? Is it the Biafra that is sabotaging by stating the reality that you have a corrupt government, you have a lot of radical religious extremism in Nigeria, and the government is doing nothing about it? Which one is more of a sabotage? And you are now coming to talk about sabotage. What the fact, the last time I checked, you are also a beneficiary of the government. You have benefited on several occasions. I think at a point in time you were detained. And by virtue of the peculiarity of Nigeria, only God knows whether why you came out was because you were truthful or because it was done the Nigerian way. Right? So what are you saying? And let's face it, Nigeria is bedeviled with all these things. And let me tell you one thing about even cessation. Cessation is not just a Biafran ideology or a concept, Biafran concept at the moment. Even the minority in the north are also of the opinion of cessation from these radical Islamic elements that are predominantly in the north. And that is why they are doing this. And even the Yorubas, and to some certain extent, even the body language of Tinubu is doing the same thing. Because just like when Buhari was in power, he tried to explore crude in Bauchi, and only God knows whether it has been discovered or not. It's the same thing that Tinubu is doing by approving the exploration of crude in Ogun State in commercial quantity. And apart from that, what do you have to say in regards relocation of some of these national agencies back to Lagos? What are you saying? See, I hate people lying between God and man. You should be sincere. Allah, I hold you to a very high esteem. But at this point in time, you are nothing but a national disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm telling you.